they'll really feed off of that.
Well, before we go into the core value, I do have one more thing I wanted to get some feedback from you. You know,
Sure.
our business, about 60% of our revenues comes from our existing clients.
Right.
So you know, marketing back to your clients, especially if you're in that type of business to business B2B environment, nurturing those relationships for continual or repeat business. You know, maybe tell us a little bit about how that's also marketing. You've got to, you don't want them to hire you for something and then they forget about you and they say, oh, hey, Mike, I want to tell you, I got my will done. And you're like, well, why didn't you come to me? Oh, you do that?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
No, I would cry.
Yeah. And that happens. I mean, that's happened to me. I mean, we do a lot of things that I don't necessarily communicate on a regular basis. Like we'll do landing pages and websites and stuff like that. I just had a client in Maryland who he started his own CLE program for attorneys, right? And so he hired GoDaddy to build this website. He paid like $4,000 for it. And then he came back to me and he says, it doesn't work. And I said, well, why didn't you come to me in the first place? And he goes, I forgot that you do that. Yeah. And so now he's spending another $2,000 with us to fix what he already paid $4,000 for. So that's a disservice on my part. I didn't do
you need to be of service and start promoting yourself more.
Exactly. And so, even I make this mistake as a marketer. Well, I feel like I'm being too pushy. And when I hear that story, I mean, this is recent, like I've been working on his problem today. And I'm like, why did you pay these people $4,000 to essentially screw up what you were trying to do? And I'm like, you know what, that's kind of on me. I should have really stayed present with. He's been a client for like 10 years. And, he just, we don't message enough. So he kind of forgot that we do that stuff. Or, they were messaging more. And so to your point, Joseph, I think we've talked about this already, especially in B2B. I'm in B2B because all my clients are business owners, as are yours. And I think that B2B is even more complicated than when you're selling to consumers because business owners are very distracted. We've got a lot of things going on. We've got employees, we've got taxes, we've got, government, we got all this stuff going on, right? And so it's more important for us to market heavily to our existing prospect and client base. The challenge I think it is, and we've had this discussion, is that you kind of want to say, I spent $1 and I got 10. And when you're in the B2B space, it doesn't work like that. Mm-mm. I mean, you can't correlate it like directly like that, but you can kind of sense it in a way, right? So I sponsor the lawyer group that you all are in, and I've had people sign up that I've spoken to once a quarter for 6 years, that 6 years later hired me, right? And so that's just a testament to the fact that when you're in the B2B space, you really have to be patient and persistent and consistent. And the same is said for consumer space, but the time span is a little shorter. Like, you might get somebody to give you money within a month to 3 months, but in B2B, it could be several years. And so consistency and proper messaging and all these things that, big businesses talk about is really important and key. The great thing is that with technology, the cost for us to do that as a small business, to stay in someone's inbox with a newsletter like you do, Kat, or to follow them around on Facebook with remarketing, or do YouTube ads and chase them around that way, you can have a set budget, whatever that budget is. And as I told you guys in our last call, pretend you're in Vegas. If you ever gone to Vegas and you go gamble, you got $500, you're not expecting that $500 to give you 1,000 or 10,000. You're just going to go have fun with it, right? So pretend for a moment that in your business, you're going to take $500 a month or 1,000 or whatever you're willing to sacrifice and just stay in front of your customers as a marketing budget. And believe it or not, it will pay off way more than Vegas will ever, but it will pay off way more in terms of the things that we just talked about, like my customer of 10 years spending $4,000 with a competitor and then coming back to me later and going, yeah, I kind of forgot that you did that. Like, that's my fault. I should be spending that $1,000 or $5,000 a month or whatever you can afford to just stay at the front of their mind, right? And many law firms like yours, you can do many things. We probably only know Joseph because he did my will, but Joseph does other things too, right? His firm does other things too. And so that's where you have to be, persistent and pervasive, and let people know, hey, I did that, but I also do this, and we do this. Case studies are great for that. Testimonials from your clients are great for that. And those things should be advertised now,
Now, would you
just,
recommend, and kind of, I'm being selfish because
uh-huh.
I'm extending our Tuesday call, right? But would you recommend, say we've, for instance, I want to let people know that we do wills and trusts.
Mhm.
We help people with, building their businesses, all of the main categories that we do. We help people with the real estate. Should one have a Facebook campaign for each of these kind of divisions at the same time, or do you do a division at a time?
Well, that's a great question. So I think like in the case of a newsletter, you can cover a lot of those points, right? And some of the answer to that question depends on your budget. Like you can't afford to advertise to all people about all things at all times. And so in the scenario where you can't do that for multiple reasons, you don't want to do that. One, they'll get distracted. Like, well, wait a minute, you're advertising too many things to me, right?
Mhm.
Um, Two, you may not have the time, effort, energy, and budget to do all those things at one time. Uh, so what I like to do is themes. So maybe each month is a different subject, or each week, depending upon your effort, availability, urgency, and budget. So, for a larger business, they might do this kind of thing on a weekly basis. For a smaller business, it might be monthly or quarterly. You just kind of have to figure out what you can afford to do in terms of time, money, and effort. So I would say for most businesses, a monthly or quarterly message or campaign would be sufficient. And if you can, work into that campaign a personal story where Joseph, or whatever the business may be, helped an individual with a particular problem that's part of that theme, then I think that resonates better than if Joseph says, hey, I do wills. He says, well, here's Nancy, and I did her will, and this is what she got of it, and this is why she wanted to do it, etc. And let's face it, with the uncertainty we've had with COVID and things like that, I think there are a lot of people who are taking a second look at their assets and their businesses and trying to decide, what if I die tomorrow from COVID or whatever the next thing is?
Mhm.
Maybe I should really think about this instead of just assuming I'm going to live forever and everything's going to be fine, right? So, I mean, that type of thing also obviously has a play on all business right now. Restaurants shutting down, so there's people that probably need to move assets around because of financial circumstances, and that's the kind of thing that you guys can help with. So I think part of that theming also needs to be relevant to the time, like what's going on in the news.
Mhm.
Is it Christmas? Is it New Year? Is it 4th of July?
Right.
What things happen in our community, our environment, or in our life right now that's relevant to the service that we can offer to our clients, right? And
Right. Like right
so,
now, my it's June. And so lately I use promo.com. I make little videos. So I'm focusing the messaging as to dads, and dads in the know they need to talk to JMD, and be prepared. And if show a great way to love your family, is to get your will done. So that's a great idea. I love the idea of themes and looking at a calendar and having a plan for the year, really.
yeah, and I mean, for a lot of it's cyclical. Like every year, there's Christmas and there's New Year's and there's 4th of July. So you can reuse a lot of the concepts over and over. So you really only have to look at it hard once. And then you've got circumstantial things like the COVID stuff, or, restaurants shutting down or whatever. There are local things that happen, like, in Texas, you guys had this big ice storms and all that stuff. So there are things that are going to be specific to where you are that you can use to help bring service to your community. And again, I think in those times of hardship, it it feels kind of like I shouldn't be marketing right now. I shouldn't be like pushing stuff to people because bad things are happening. But again, when you come from a place of service, no, you should. you should be trying to help those folks and let them know that you're here to protect their assets or, help them grow their business. In my case, as a marketer, I mean, for me, like in COVID, we lost a lot of clients, but then as things started to lighten up, they were like, now I need business because I have all this debt I've built up because I wasn't doing business, and I really need to bring in more to offset what happened in the past. And so it's really my job to make sure that they know I'm here to help them. Right. And so you kind of have to have that mind shift, I think, about coming from a place of service. And Kat, this is something you and I talked about in Arizona. And I think that was really a compelling conversation. So I appreciate the fact that we're here discussing this, because sometimes, even as a marketer, I feel like I'm too pushy, even though it's my job to be pushy, is I'm too pushy, and that I feel like, I don't really want to be seen as a jerk. But if you're coming from the right place in your heart, then you aren't, right?
Definitely.
That may lead us.